Ladies and gentlemen of the media, you're most welcome, and thank you very much for coming to attend this briefing on the current issues. Of course, you know very well that another boycott of the parliament happened last week. Was it last week? It was this week. And the IO, as usual, walked out of the meeting, and the election law was passed. The controversial issue was why 5% to the president. Of course, IO did not want the 5% to be added. They wanted all the seats to be elected so that everybody exercises his right to vote or be voted in, so that the minorities suffer. In fact, when this 5% was put in the election law, it was put there intentionally. But unfortunately, the IO believes that this thing is being done, this 5% is being given to Salva Kiir. Is Salva Kiir the elected president? And this is a provision which is given to any president of the government of South Sudan, any elected president, not to Salva Kiir, because Salva Kiir will not, even if he passes, he will not exercise this except after the election. And if he doesn't pass, the person who comes next will exercise the same. This 5% is meant for the minorities who cannot, under any circumstances, pass or bring in a representative. These minorities are the ones which are being put into consideration. This is in addition to the people with special needs. These people with special needs are very few, and they are part and parcel of the South Sudanese community. So it is the right which is being protected. It is the right of the minorities that is being protected, so that when the elections are done, then it will be seen which section. They are to Gabila, the smallest Gabila, that cannot make even half of a constitution, of a constituency. It is that nationality that will be represented. They are not meant for the president to fill them up with his supporters. No. Because once the president is elected, then that president is the president of the whole. He's not the president of those who elected him only. He's the president of the whole, and as such the president was given that privilege in order to bring in the few, the minorities, so that they become part and parcel of our system. This is the objective. Otherwise, if that is the reason why the IO marched out, then they are for the oppression of the minorities. They are there to deprive the minorities of their rights. If we are to go for elections, people are to vote, then definitely these minorities will not make it. And if they cannot make it, then they perish. Is that what they are after? I don't think so. So, unless they have other reasons, then they have the right. Then we will justify their boycott of the law. Number two, it is very clear from day one that IO specifically is not for elections. So all these are tactics and delaying tactics and so forth, so that we don't go for elections. Because if the election law is not out, definitely we will not go for elections. This is the most important law. And the political parties council law. These are the two laws which are the most outstanding And that must be there in order to run any elections. Because the political parties council will register the political parties, and the National Election Commission will run the elections. These are the two most important provisions or laws that need to be there. And if they are to obstruct all these, then definitely there will be no election. That is all that they are after. And this is what they believed in. We are going for elections. And if we are going for elections, they say we are not going for elections because of the following. This is what they say. They don't want elections because of the following. Number one, the security arrangements are not in place. How long will it take us for us to have the security arrangements in place? Security arrangements are now underway. Arrangements are underway now for the deployment of the forces, and at the same time for the coming in of phase 2 forces for training. And by the end of this year, the second phase will be graduated. They are not recruits. Unless they tell us that they are recruits, okay. But if they are not recruits, they have been a competent force, then definitely they will not need that long time to be trained to qualify as combatants. So the security arrangements cannot be an obstacle for the elections because they will be graduated and deployed. For the police to be trained to be in charge of the elections is a question of 1 month's training. Not that only, but it could even be less because they will not be trained on the police work, but they will be trained on that specific job that they will be doing for that short period only. And they go back as police. So the security arrangements are taking place, they are happening, and that is not an obstacle. The population census. Population census is not a condition for elections to be run. It's not a condition because we can go for elections without population census. We can use the last population census, and we can use other means whereby we can make the necessary assessment of the population wherever they are. There is a change in the movement of the population last year and this year. This year people have started going back. Last year people had evacuated some of the areas. People are now going back to those areas. So there is movement, constant movement of population. With that movement of population, we'll be in a position to make the necessary assessment and come up with the constituencies that will be contested. In the election law, we had provided for 3 categories. That is the geographical, the party list, and women list. These are there, and this is what had been in the last election law. And we'll continue with that. So, population census is not a condition for the election. You come to the repatriation. First and foremost, repatriation is voluntary. It is not compulsory. So any refugee or any returnee or any displaced, any refugee is free to come back to South Sudan and he becomes a returnee. And he will be free to go to his home area, to be taken to his home area. Any displaced person is free to go to his home area, and he will be transported if he asks if he requests going there. But we cannot force them to go to their respective home areas. So repatriation is not a condition for elections. The permanent constitution The permanent constitution, there are people who think that, yes, let us take the agreement as it is. Let us catch the bull by the horn. And let us first go in for the constitution, for the permanent constitution. In the first place, this permanent constitution is a process. Even if the commission was to be established by then, it would have been difficult for us to come up with a permanent constitution at present. We call it a permanent constitution, and there is nothing permanent about it. Because any constitution is a constitution. You don't call it permanent. When al-Bashir set up his permanent constitution, not al-Bashir, it was Numeri, who put up what he called the permanent constitution. That constitution is no longer there now. So there is nothing permanent. We have the constitution only, Constitution of the Republic of South Sudan. Now, since the constitution making is a process, then we don't need to hurry up with it so that we can have a constitution. Yes, we hurried up with the constitution with our interim constitution, which is operational up to now, in order to take us to the independence. Because we cannot be independent without a constitution. That is how we came up with that constitution hurriedly, knowing that we will come up with a permanent constitution after independence. Now, for us to come up with a permanent constitution, the permanent constitution needs to be prepared and passed by the representatives of the people. The representatives of the people. This parliament now, which is 550, plus the Council of States, which is 100, that makes 650. Are these the representatives of the people? Were they elected? What I know so far, only 170 or 171 were elected in 2010 for the National Assembly, for the state, for the Regional Assembly, because by then we were a subnational, and 96 were elected to Khartoum. These are the people who were brought here. I think we were talking of elected people. This is the number that was elected, who are less than half of the membership. These people, the current parliament cannot represent the people does not represent the people of South Sudan, and as such, they need to go. We need to go for elections. The people of South Sudan should be given the opportunity to elect their representatives, and it is the representatives of the people who will come and pass the constitution, not us. So, what we are saying is that the current constitution-making process, yes, will continue, but we will continue with elections according to the current constitution. We will amend the current constitution so that it gives us the power to elect. The body that will be elected will be a constituent assembly. A constituent assembly is a body that is elected in order to write the constitution. In order to write the constitution. In Arabic, it is Al-Jama'iyya At-Ta'sisiyya. This is the body that will be elected by the people of South Sudan. This body will come and sit, deliberate on the constitution, discuss it, pass it, and then it is signed into law, and thereafter this parliament is dissolved. And people go for fresh elections in accordance with the provisions of the would-be constitution of the Republic of South Sudan. This is our position, because at present, we in the parliament, we don't represent the people of South Sudan. The parliament comprised of appointees is not a parliament of the people. This is a parliament of the agreement. And the agreement does not represent the will of the people of South Sudan. So that is our situation, that is our position. We are going for elections, and it is this body, this elected body, that will come and pass the constitution. It should not be used as an obstacle and as a condition that if the constitution is not there, then we are not going for elections. The parties to the agreement will definitely agree on this. We will go for elections. And if anybody doesn't want to go for elections, it is up to him. We don't ask him as to why is he not going. Because it is a right given, and if you have decided not to exercise that right, then it is up to you. We will not ask you as to why are you not contesting or why are you not voting. These are rights given. Any group of people, anybody who accepts this will go for elections. Anybody who does not accept will stay away. And we are going ahead. So my advice to the colleagues, especially to the other political parties and especially the IO, is that let us go for elections. Let us go for elections so that you bring in your legitimate representatives. So that you give the people of South Sudan the opportunity to elect their representatives. These are the people whom we will authorize to write the constitution for us. Permanent constitution, as I stated, is a process. And as such, if it is a process, then we don't need to say we want it now. People have been saying the constitution must first come out, and if it doesn't come out, we need to make another extension. If you make another extension, the people of South Sudan will laugh at you. And they have gone as far as saying 24 months. This is the roadmap of the roadmap. We are not ready for any other roadmap. Or we are not ready for any other extension. It is the people of South Sudan who will decide this time, not us. And anybody who continues to reject is an obstructionist. Anybody who continues to obstruct, to reject and resist is obstructing the elections. The president went to New York, and in his speech he was very clear on two major issues. That we are suffering from arms embargo, which is contributing towards the obstruction. It is actually an obstruction to the implementation of the agreement. This is one. Number two, we are going for elections. And so we are going for elections. Members of the international community have accepted going for elections. Of course, they want to know us. Who are we? We all appear to be representatives of the people. Okay, let the people authorize us. Let them mandate us again. We want the people to mandate us this time. And as such, we are going for elections. Those who say, well, no problem, we are not going for elections until all these are done, it's not true. This is not correct. South Sudan belongs to us all, and we must involve everybody. We must involve the people of South Sudan to decide for themselves. During the when the SPLM-IO marched out of the storm out of the building of the house. Of course, they stated a lot of reasons, and they stated that they are not going for elections. Even the chairman of the IO this morning in the newspapers repeatedly said there is no elections as long as the constitution is not there. And he is still holding on to extension for 24 months. Why should they not give the people of South Sudan the chance and ask them as to whether they will give us another 24 months or not, instead of us deciding all the time for ourselves? Let us give the people of South Sudan that right or that privilege. If they will say, no, we are not voting, we are giving you another period. I really doubt if the people of South Sudan are ready for anything as such. So we need to be very clear about this. And anybody who does not want to contest is up to or her. But we are going for elections. There is a body, these hold-out groups. Hold-out groups, I don't want to call them rebels, even though they are. These hold-out groups, which call themselves the National Consensus Forum. This National Consensus Forum, which says National Consensus Forum is an umbrella organization comprising 21 South Sudanese political, civil society, women, youth, and faith-based organizations, and the academic and professional association, and represents a major segment of the South Sudanese society. A major. In the diaspora, they form a major. What about us here in South Sudan? What are we? The population of South Sudan. If those people who have decided to go and collect themselves somewhere and then they call themselves a major, then what are we here in South Sudan? These people who defected, some of them escaped for their own reasons. Some of them are even being looked for. Some are being looked for having committed crimes, and they escape. They join the other organizations or rebel groups, and now they are calling themselves the people, the representatives of the people. If they are representatives of the people, then what are we? They are saying the National Consensus Forum informs South Sudanese and the world that President Salva Kiir Mayardit does not represent the sovereign will of the people of South Sudan in his participation at the United Nations General Assembly in New York. Does not represent the sovereign will. Who did that evaluation? And what was the criteria used for determination of the people's will? And is there a yardstick whereby you can measure the people's will? If President Salva is a president here in South Sudan, then what are they to say that he does not represent the people's will? Yes, he may not represent their opinion, but who are they? They are an insignificant group of people who decided to assemble themselves and sign. They sign a document, and even though they said there are 21 people have signed here, I think they have signed 10 of them. SPLM Real, SSUFA, PCCA, SAA, academic and professionals, NAS, NDM, PF, STEPS, SSNMC, and SSPMA. These are the people who signed. I don't need to call them out by name. These are representatives of the... But where are they? They are all in the diaspora. What are they doing there? And how are they surviving over there? These are the people who are surviving to serve the interests of others. They are there to serve the interests of the few international community members who are not in favor of the agreement. So these are the groups that are obstructing the agreement. If they believe that they are representatives of the people, I call upon them to come back to South Sudan, to come and contest and let them pass elections. This is the only way whereby you will determine the will of the people. You will not determine the will of the people meanwhile you are in the diaspora. You will determine it when you come here and people vote you in. This is where the people express their will, not there. So I'm calling upon those people, this National Consensus Forum, to come to their senses and join us in South Sudan, for building South Sudan, and join us in the elections. Let them come and register their political parties and contest elections. In so doing, this is where we will practice democracy. But if we are to be there outside, we will continue to obstruct, and we are delaying the development in South Sudan. Because we don't want war, no going back to war, but we sit on the table. They are calling for a round-table conference. Okay, let them come. We will come and sit with them here in South Sudan. We are not ready to go and discuss issues outside South Sudan. If they have any problem, let them come. I call upon them to come, as long as they have come up with a good program, which is the round-table conference. We are not objecting it, but you come to South Sudan, we'll come and sit in one of the hotels here. And if they are fearing, they will be protected, if anything at all. But for them to be outside, continue to talk from there, and being handled as young babies by other people, this is not correct. So I call upon them to come to South Sudan. Stop all this, come to South Sudan, so that we go for elections. That is the best way. And this is the meaning of democracy. Without that, no need for us to continue talking. Other issues on the implementation of the agreement are going on well. And as I stated last time, there is no agreement that is usually implemented 100%. And I gave the example of the CPA. Some provisions of the CPA are still unresolved up to now. And we are moving. The same thing with this CPA, with this agreement. Some provisions will not be implemented, but we will continue to implement them. So this idea of saying it must first be implemented 100%, after which we'll move forward, is this Constituent Assembly, the assembly that will be elected, or is it a different assembly. Constituent Assembly is a parliament elected by the people. And it is this same Constituent Assembly which the people will elect. This is the body that will come and draft the constitution and come up with it. So they are not different. The permanent constitution, when it is out, then this is the time when you will elect that body that will comprise of the representatives of the people. You may call it a parliament, you may call it an assembly, you may give it any name. But this is the house of the representatives of the people. So the current body that we are proposing to be elected is the Constituent Assembly that will be elected by the people so that they come and draft their constitution. They come and draft and enact their constitution. So these are two different parliaments. The first parliament, which is the Constituent Assembly, will be elected to come and draft the constitution and pass it. After passing it, well, it will be given time frame within which it will do its work. After that, after passing the constitution, the permanent constitution, then it will be dissolved and people will go for new elections in accordance with the provisions of the permanent constitution. This is what I meant. So that there is no any other parliament other than this one that we should be elected now. You said I said we are going for elections. Yes, we as SPLM. We as SPLM and we as SPLM and our allies, we are going for elections. And SPLM being the leading party, that definitely we are going for elections. And all the parties signatory to the agreement are free to decide what to do. But we are going as SPLM for elections. And we are going for elections as declared by the President of the Republic. And the President of the Republic is not the President of SPLM. He is the President of the Republic of South Sudan. So when you ask these people are inseparable. They are two in one. So that is the situation. And this is why I said anybody is free. Anybody who does not want to go for elections, it is up to him. But we are going for elections. About the shrinking civic space. I don't know people are coming of course with new terminologies. Shrinking civic space. Civic space has ever been there and it is there. It is when you abuse that right, when you misuse that right, and you fall into conflict with the law, you find yourself in conflict with the law, then you say, Wallahi, I'm being deprived of my right. That is not the case. When you abuse that right, it is the duty of the government to make sure that you are in conformity with the law. You cannot be stopped from exercising your right as long as you are acting within the law. But when you abuse it and then you claim to be exercising your right, there is no law in the world that gives you the right to step on the toes of others. But this is what people tend to say. What is it after all you have been writing in your newspapers and whatever is being discussed in the radios and TVs? Have we ever stopped you? No, nothing. Then what is that political space what is that civic space? And when you talk of a civic space, what is it by itself? Civic space. It need to be defined to me that, because I don't quite understand what is a civic space. Is it a space for the civilians? Or is it a space for civil society? Or is it a space for what? For the space, you are representatives, all of you here, except the few, but you are all working with the civil society. You are civil society organizations. You are part and parcel of the civil society. If any obstruction, you should have reached me. If any harassment, you would have reached me. But when you abuse your power, when you misuse your position, this is where the government is charged of harassing and so forth. That is not the case. And I have ever been saying it. Journalist is two persons in one. A journalist is two persons in one. There is journalist, the journalist, and the journalist, the human being. When you behave like a human being and you find yourself in conflict with the law, don't claim to be a journalist. This is where our problem is. When you are acting in accordance with the provisions of your profession, then you are now a journalist. You are a journalist, the journalist. So then let us differentiate between all these. When we talk about shrinking of civic space, there is nothing as such. This space has ever been there, and everybody is talking, and everybody is saying whatever he wants to say, provided that you don't violate the rules and regulations, provided that you respect the ethics of your profession. This is the most important. So, what I'm hearing is that, yes, there are some international organizations and even NGOs here who come and talk to us about civil rights, all these rights. Meanwhile, they are not even in their own countries. They are not, the rights that are being enjoyed here in South Sudan, even some of them are not in America. But people come to us here and say, oh, you are doing this, you are violating, you are what, you are harassing, you are doing this. We are part of this world, and we know what is happening in the world. So we should not be carried away by all these terminologies. You are with us here. If you have any problem, we are here to protect you. And I'm sure there is no journalist who had been arrested, I think, for the last 2 years. The last journalist to be arrested was Michael Christopher. He was the last journalist arrested. But from that time up to now, nothing has happened. This is because we are here to protect you, to ensure that you enjoy and exercise your rights, but exercise them the right way. This is what I'm saying. So those who say that there is no civic space, these are the people who tell you that life is in South Sudan, there are no human rights, there are a lot of violations, there are a lot of this, there are a lot of this, there are a lot of this. Meanwhile, those who come to us here do not even have these rights in their home areas, their countries. So, let me assure you that we have everything is there. People have their rights, they are exercising them, and nobody has ever been interfered with. And we will not do that, provided that you conform, you act in accordance with the law, so that you don't find yourself in conflict with the law. Yes, it is said that Dr. Riek Machar has been restricted. According to the first deputy speaker who talked in his press conference, He said Dr. Riek Machar has been stopped from going A, B, C, D. The last of which was that he was invited to attend the General Assembly in the UN General Assembly and was prevented from doing that. I will not talk about the rest, but I will tell. If at all if they know and they are sure that the president has been directed by IGAD not to allow him to go out, why should they not ask IGAD if the president is unable to answer? If they are unable to get the correct answer, why should they not ask IGAD? And instead of talking all the time, our chairman is being prevented from moving, let them ask the IGAD. IGAD will either deny or confirm. But for us to keep on talking, repeating the same scenario is unbecoming. So my advice to them is that let them check on the IGAD. If the IGAD says no, then let them find out where the problem is. To come to the last invitation, which was mentioned, I'm unable to understand how did the Secretary General, how dare he invite the President and the first Vice President of the same country to go and attend the General Assembly meeting in New York? This by itself was an irregularity, if it had happened at all. Were he invited in what capacity? His president is going. The president had been sending vice presidents. Maybe the only complaint that he would have had would have been to say, why not send me this time? Because almost all the vice presidents have been sent. And if we were to complain that the 4 vice presidents have gone, they have attended the General Assembly, why not me this time? Malaysia, kalam bito kan mungkin, Rais kan beruda leo. But to say that he was invited to attend the General Assembly meeting together with his president was an irregularity if it had happened. And the president would have the right to refuse. Because both of them cannot go. Now when he goes there, is he going to address the General Assembly or is he going just to be a listener? These are some of the issues that we need to address. My colleagues in the IO should follow the right trend. If they believe that the president is the one obstructing and not allowing him to go out because he received directives from the IGAD, let them ask IGAD. This is what I can say about it. Is what I can say about it. They need to counter-check and find out and correct their sources. If there is someone who told them that it is IGAD that directed the president, then let them confirm from IGAD. But what I know so far, he has never been stopped from going anywhere. And if he has decided not to move, it is not our duty to tell him to move. Simon of the Dawn, you are saying, who are those minorities to be given the represented to or to be appointed in the 5%? Don't you know who are the minorities here? If you are asking such a question, then you are not a South Sudanese. Because you know who are the minorities here. Minorities are the Makaraka. Do you know where the Makaraka is? Do you know them? If you don't know where Makaraka is, Makaraka are a population in Yei River County towards living at the borders between Yei and Meridi. They are the smallest. You have the Kachipo in the mountains of Buma, in Buma Mountains. You have the people of in Maiut area, Isumushun. That is small, very small, tiny tribe over there. These are the minorities we are talking about. If you don't know them, you better go down and know.
Maybe including mine can change also.
Yeah, it depends on. Because we are not talking about the majorities, we are talking about the minorities. Because they are minorities of the minorities. So these are the people meant to be represented. The other category that cannot be represented is the people with the special needs. This is what we are saying. The IO had been pressing for creating constituencies for the minorities and for these people with the special needs. But what will be the criteria and how long, and what will be the mechanism for them to vote? And how far will the people of South Sudan be in a position to understand this complex way of electing different categories? That is it. This is why it is said that the party list and the women list will include women, youth, all others will be represented in the list. If any of these minorities is left out, then they can be represented. Because some of these minorities may be within the party list or women list. And if they happen to be there, well and good. But there are those who will not be there. It is these people who are being targeted. So that is what we mean by the minority. Deployment of our forces. The deployment is in process. I think these forces which are graduated already will now be deployed. They are looking now for cars to go to the centers, take them to where they are deployed. Because their deployment is coming out. It's already done in paper and it will be done in action. The problem, what had been delaying all this time is that the IO, this middle echelon you are talking about, the chairman of the IO was given the list of titles, given the titles of officers, ranks of officers whom he should nominate, so that they are commissioned to be part and parcel of the current graduated forces to lead them. Up to now, they have not been given out. And as such, it is decided that these people should be deployed without the leadership. Because this is the type of obstruction I have been talking about. Failing to provide the list so that it goes to the president for commissioning. After which they will be deployed with their forces. Now these forces will be deployed by Tamsil. Inkin wadi gula winter guide become temporary up to that time. This is the situation in which we are. So these are some of the problems that are facing the deployment of the forces now. And unless these forces move out from there, it will not be possible to take in phase 2. Phase 2 now is required to report to the cantonment sites. It is required to report to the cantonment sites so that they hand over their rifles. Because what happened in phase 1, we don't want it to repeat itself in phase 2. In phase 1, the forces were taken for training without being screened first. So they went to the training center without their arms handed over. They left their arms at home and then they came empty-handed and were taken to the training centers. This will not happen in phase 2. In phase 2, you go to the cantonment site, you hand over your rifle, then you are registered. After which you will be screened whether you are fit or not. Because what happened in phase 1, everybody went to the training center without screening. And they were screened thereafter. After screening, it was found that some of them were no longer fit for military, but to go to DDR after attending the training. These are the people now grappling with the DDR Commission. DDR Commission wants money to remove them from the training centers so that they are put somewhere and given other skills training. This is what is happening. So, the forces are moving in, will be removed now, and then those who reported to the cantonment sites will be transported to the training centers. If no people report to the cantonment sites, there will be no going for the training center. No going for the training center unless you hand over your rifle this time. And this is the situation. The IO and SAWA are the people who have the forces. Other political parties mind them. But IO and SAWA are the ones who have forces. And they need to hand over their rifles. For SSPDF, these are forces which are already there and they have their rifles. And when they are needed, they leave the rifles in their headquarters and they go. When they are being graduated, the rifles are collected, taken to them, and graduated. At present, we are facing difficulty in graduating these forces, in deploying these forces. Even at the time of graduation, we had to graduate them with sticks because those who are in the SSPDF with their arms cannot be armed, meanwhile their colleagues have no arms. And this is where the problem is now. We cannot deploy them and give the SSPDF their arms and leave out these forces without arms. So that is where the problem is now. And we don't want this to repeat itself in phase 2. This is why, so I cannot give you a definite date, but up to the end of this year, all these will be clear. You talk about the NC, National Constitutional Amendment Committee, isn't it? Review, NCRC. You said the NCRC had just presented the NGOs bill. What have the NGOs to do with the elections? What is their role there in the elections? NGOs are NGOs. And they continue to operate irrespective of whether free elections or mafia elections, they continue to operate. So, and they are operating now. Are they not operating because of the bill? The bill will be processed, it will be passed, and will continue to operate, irrespective of whether elections are there or not. So, there are some of the bills which have nothing to do at all with the implementation of the agreement. Yes, it is said that some of these bills will be amended, some of these bills will be enacted, but they have nothing to do with elections. And as such, these bills, plus other bills which are outstanding, have no impact at all on the elections. What we need are only two bills, as I stated. The election law and the political parties law. These are the two, which have much to do with the process. And as such, there is nothing. I cannot say when will they finish, because they are the technocrats doing it in their own way. And as such, I cannot tell you as to when will they finish. They will finish when they finish. They will finish when they finish. I don't have any time for them. Mayor of number one citizen, well, you know. You said the election law. In the election law, you did not see tenure of the office of the president. This is not put in the Constitution. It is put in the. It is not put in the law, but in the Constitution. In the current Constitution, it is 5 years. And when time comes for it, it will be put like that, 5 years. Renewable once. You will be elected now, you take 5 years, you can contest for another. If you pass, you go for another years, but no more thereafter. But they bukun fi dastur, not in the law. So, that is it. Consult your constitution, it will tell you that. Galma fi age of retirement. For your information, it is only in the civil service that there is age of retirement. In politics, there is no age of retirement. Huh? There is no age of retirement. You retire, you can decide to say, Walaya can ma beg retire and ma shibeti. That is you, that is a voluntary retirement. Or else, you are rejected by the people. When you go for elections and they refuse to vote you in, then you are automatically, this is a forced retirement. That is how we will retire.
Can it be put like 65?
No. Because it are a public service, but Murilo retirement lay because of the pensions. The King Indiana, we don't have pensions. We don't have pensions. And as such, you continue to stay until when you find that you are no longer in a position to deliver, or you want to go and look after your own affairs, other than these public affairs, then you retire. Or else the people reject you, and automatically they have retired you. That is the situation for politicians. Mafia age of retirement, otherwise Biden would have not been there. Yes. Yeah. Even that, not that only, but in some constitutions, there is no time limit for how many times will I contest elections. There is no time limit. I can contest today. If I'm elected, then I can contest next. It depends on the provision of my constitution. There are some constitutions whereby you can retire voluntarily. But that is not the case. It depends on the provisions of each country's constitution. In America, for example, it is said the president will have 2 consecutive years. But the constitution is silent as to whether you can come back after giving a period, 1 year, 1 period. Then you have the right to contest again. And this is what Trump is doing. Trump is now contesting because he has given 1 phase for Biden, and he has the right. The Constitution cannot stop him from contesting again because there is already that gap which has been created and it is gone. Well, as I stated earlier, we are going for elections. We are going for elections because we need to give the people of South Sudan that right. Allow them to exercise their right to elect the people they want, so that they come and talk on their affairs. We are saying this because the current parliament is not an elected parliament, even though some of us were elected those days in 2010. But now, time is overdue, and we cannot say that we are still mandated by those people. We need to go for renewal, if at all. And as such, we say we are going for elections. Yes, for these elections to happen, the agreement says that we go for elections. But there are certain terms and conditions that are set for us to go for elections. When you go for elections, and as I stated earlier, you don't really need to implement all the provisions of the agreement 100%. There are some provisions that can put aside, as long as they are not necessary. And you continue with the implementation. This is why we are saying we are going for elections, because the agreement says that we go for elections. This is one. The agreement says we go for elections under certain conditions. If we don't meet these conditions, then we don't. It doesn't tell us that if you don't meet these conditions, then you don't go for elections. So these are issues of evaluation and question of fact. So when we say we're going for elections, because the main objective of this agreement is what? The main objective, the target of this agreement is elections. And if we are being obstructed, if implementation of some of these provisions are being obstructed in a way or the other, so that we don't go for elections, this is what we don't accept. So we are telling those who are obstructing us, please don't obstruct. Leave us to continue, so that we talk to the people of South Sudan, so that the people of South Sudan can decide who will lead them for the next period. People of South Sudan can decide who are those who will come and write their permanent constitution. This is what we are saying. So that is it. For Senegidio, for the whole-out groups, it is not the government which is giving a condition. It is not the government which is giving a condition. Senegidio is the body that is in charge of the agreement, like when we were in Ethiopia. And they, as mediators, they don't come up with the agenda, but we agree on the agenda and we discuss it, just like what we were doing in Addis and Khartoum. So if we don't agree on the agenda, there is no way we can proceed. There is no way we can proceed if we don't agree on the agenda. We had agreed earlier on the agenda, but the whole-out groups are every now and then coming up with a new agenda. What we are after the old agenda, which was agreed, so that we continue negotiating on this basis. But if we keep on changing goals, then definitely it is a clear indication that there is no progress. Because whatever comes up, it means that we have to start it again, from the bottom. This is why we are disagreeing. They have now come up with the roundtable conference. Roundtable conference is not like negotiations. It is not attended by the few. just like what we were doing in Addis or what we were doing in Naivasha those days. It is attended by the people. And if it is attended by the people, will you be ready to transport the people of South Sudan and accommodate them in Italy? That is not possible. This is why we are saying, okay, if you are talking about a round table conference, it should be done here. You come here, come and stay here, it will be done. And we gave them a living example. When Dr. Riek Machar came here, he came without forces, and we provided him with the necessary protection. And I'm sure it is that same force which is continuing with him up to now. He's well protected. Why not on these people? If they are fearing at all. Last time when they came here, before they could rebel again, when they came here and took and cleared their accounts in the banks, they were not under any protection. When they deceived us and came and when their bank accounts were released, they cleared them all and then they left once and for all. Were they under protection? No. And even when we were traveling abroad, they were allowed to go. So there is no question of us giving any conditions for them to. As to who is going to write the Constitution, I don't know, but I had stated it clearly. It is this Parliament or this Assembly, which we call the Constituent Assembly, which will write the Constitution. Even in the agreement, the roadmap in the agreement talks of a Constituent Assembly, that this current Parliament, the current Parliament, before it is dissolved, when the Constitution is ready, it will transform itself into a Constituent Assembly and pass the Constitution as a Constituent Assembly, after which it will dissolve itself. This is there in the Constitution. So instead of us using this current Parliament, we are saying, let us elect the representative of the people. These are the people who will come and pass this Constitution. This is what we are saying. So they are the ones who will come and write the Constitution. What is the current position of the government regarding elections? The position of the government is clear. We are going for election. If there are any dissenting voices, then we will see what are they. For the amendment of the agreement or the Constitution, this will be done in accordance with what we did last time when we extended, when we did the roadmap. This will be the procedure. We do it according to the roadmap. The agreement doesn't say that everything must be done by consensus. It says it should be done by consensus. In the absence of consensus, then by majority vote. So that is it. Al Arabiya, your question is what is the position of the government regarding the mediation in the Sudan conflict? Well, of course, if you have been following very well, the IGAD last time had nominated President Salva to chair it. But when they went and sat again, they decided that it should be President Ruto to lead it, and the Sudan government and the opposition, Hemeti and Burhan, both of them are not clear about the whole issue, and they have been sending delegations here. Our position is that we are with what IGAD decided. This is our position. If the parties in conflict in Sudan want President Salva to mediate, then they should come together. We cannot take any of them without the other. If both of them accept, let them go to IGAD. IGAD will give them the green light to come here. Because we don't want to be seen to be struggling with our member colleagues in IGAD. If the Sudan parties accept that they come to South Sudan, we have no objection. But let them follow the correct procedure. That is it. So that we are not held responsible and blamed for whatever. Are the parties supposed to agree on the elections? What is the mechanism? I think I have already answered this. Okay?
Yeah, sorry, sir. I think I did not hear your responses to my question, which is what is actually the difficulty preventing the parties from implementing the other provision of the peace agreement, like the constitution?
What is the difficulty?
Yes, what is the difficulty? We need to know that.
In implementing some provisions of the agreement.
Yeah, like military spirit, as you have been saying.
Well, of course, problems. Of course, there are people who are, some of the parties are actually obstructing the implementation so that people do not go for elections. Some of the problems are, yes, as you put it, funding. But funding alone is not the obstacle. Because there are some other delays in the implementation. Funding is only in terms of the implementation of the security arrangements, Chapter 2. This is where funding comes in. But other issues that come in terms of delays, like the NCRC, that is not under us. There was a question about the time frame for this commission or committee to accomplish its task. For your information, this committee is not under us. It is shared and deputized by foreigners. So it is not under us. And as such, we cannot give a proper deadline. And these foreigners, when they come and stay here for some time. They come and go. And we wait for them. Because they are under IGAD, not under us. So these are some of the obstacles that have been affecting the progress in the implementation of the agreement. And as such, all these accumulated delays led to the delay which made us to go in for the roadmap, not the roadmap only, but for the first extension, and then for the roadmap. And since these problems, we have been extending all this time with the hope that some of these problems will be resolved. But at the end, we are convinced that all these problems cannot be resolved at a go. So the best thing is to move forward. And whatever is not finished will be finished in due course.